Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And as you saw there, we had the opening to one of my favorite shows of all time, and that show was called Smallville. It it was first broadcast in 2001, a couple of weeks after the bombings of the tragedy of September 11th. And it was, to me, a great show. It was a fantastic show. And to think that that was 25 years ago, 24 years ago, is just mind boggling to me. Where did the years go by? Good gravy. Back when Smallville began, I was a 27-year-old kid working for the mayor's office of the city of New York. Made a lot, was making great money, spinning plates left and right with chicks. Living in New York City is incredible for you back in those days. And since then, I had gotten married, had 3 kids, got divorced, and where I am now, if you had told me that I would be teaching in some small little town in the East Coast when I was 27 years old, living in New York, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are, right? We think we make plans and God laughs. Anyway, about Smallville, this was a show that came out of almost nowhere. Now, if you know the backstory a little bit of how Smallville began, the producers, Alfred Groh and Miles Millar, they were looking to begin a TV series on the WB network, which merged with UPN, which then became the CW. And they, at first, were looking to create an origin story or a chronicle of a young Bruce Wayne. And the show that was pitched was called Bruce Wayne. And the show was going to be a dramatic series about this young Bruce Wayne and his journey towards becoming Batman. The show didn't really generate any interest. And a couple of years later, it inspired the idea for a Superman origin story, which would later become Smallville. Now, the Bruce Wayne story did come into effect years later, about 14 years later, when we got the show Gotham, and they later used that idea of chronicling a young Bruce Wayne raised by Alfred. And excuse me, and away we go with that show. Which that show was pretty good. Five seasons. It was okay. But Smallville, as many of my many friends of mine and many people that were in the business I had discussed this with, kind of disagree with me, and some even laughed at me. I always thought Smallville saved the superhero genre. If you remember what happened, Superman in the 1980s was completely destroyed. The quest for peace was a disaster. And Superman had not even been considered for a big budget movie for a very long time. Batman comes out in 1989, the Tim Burton one with Jack Nicholson. It is huge. It was a very good movie. Batman 2 was okay, not as great as Batman 1, but then, just like movie studios do, they want to rampage and jam down your throat a good thing, and it just turned to shit. And the Batman films that carried on, that had different guys portraying Batman, Val Kilmer and George Clooney, they had some huge stars playing the villains, like Jim Carrey as the Riddler, Mr. Freeze as was Arnold Schwarzenegger. The movies just became campy and crappy and stupid. and Batman was nearly destroyed right after Superman. Smallville comes out now, and it was kind of, when you watched it, especially season one, it almost had an Archie-esque type high school experience that you would think, people are going to really get into this. Smallville ran for 10 seasons, and it focused on a young Clark Kent. I think he was a freshman in high school at the time when the show starts to air. It was all about small town, varsity jackets, football players, the cool kids, the pretty girls, the cheerleaders, all that good stuff. And eventually, Clark grows up. He learns about his powers. He learns who he is, um, and he it leads him to becoming Superman. It leads him to the Daily Planet and his destiny of becoming the Man of Steel. Now, the story was quite ambitious. It was an ambitious journey and a solid take on the years never explored in the Superman or the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeves. Most of the story's content or the show's content were created through chunks of the Krypton meteors slamming into Smallville, including Clark, and changing people's lives forever. In season one, Clark has to deal with the guilt of knowing that his arrival is the reason why Lana Lang, who he's madly in love with, why Lana Lang's parents died. So there's a tremendous amount of guilt there. And the show initially in season one used the kryptonite landings and the kryptonite meteor shower as a source of creating villains. And in season one, those villains were considered freaks of the week. So, I mean, there was silly ones, but they were kind of cool. There was one boy that controlled electricity. There was one kid who was, he controlled bugs, and so on and so on and so on. The meteorites also helped bring together the main group of Smallville. The show focuses on a handful of characters, Lana Lang being one of them, who was orphaned because of the meteor shower in episode one. It also created antagonists like Lex Luthor, who became more sinister and sly, and of course bald because of the same happening. We then had our commoners like Chloe and Pete. Pete was in the comics Clark's good friend. The little controversy about that at the time was Pete in the comics, of course, was white. They casted a black kid to be Pete here. Oops. And they created Chloe Sullivan. Chloe Sullivan was a Smallville creation. She wasn't ever in the comics. And they pushed into the story through the meteor showers, though not directly affected by them. Chloe and Pete acted as bridges between the main characters, which worked out well, repeatedly, as these side characters would come in to push the main characters into each story week by week. And this was carefully crafted. And I thought well done. I thought there was a lot of work put into the writing here. Now, the great part of the series was the relationship between Lex and Clark. Lex Luthor was cast, Michael Rosenbaum was cast as Lex Luthor, and I still think outside of Gene Hackman, he portrays Lex Luthor the best. His growth from weakling to powermonger was beautifully done and beautifully acted, and he might have outshined Tom Welling, who, of course, is Clark Kent, in the series from time to time. Why DC never adapted Rosenbaum into the role permanently is an unsolved mystery. He was that character. He owned Lex Luthor. And everyone before and after him could not stand up to his performance, except, of course, for Gene Hackman. Now, Hackman, you can argue, wasn't as ruthless, but it was also a different time period, too. Welling complimented Rosenbaum's performance pretty well. Welling's Kent progression is an opposite and more innocent direction than than Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor, and this led Welling to his proper and well-earned role as the Man of Steel. During the series, fans were dying to see him don the cape and costume for 5 seasons, it seemed. The story did work well with Welling's progression from high school goofball to superhero, who would be his character's destiny. Welling worked well with the material. He played a great opposite to Rosenbaum, and he did everything he could to respect Christopher Reeve's version of Superman, and that's what made this show great, because they never veered off the classic Superman model, much like the later Superman adaptations did. And for years, fans were kept dreaming about a Welling Rosenbaum Superman movie, and it is a reminder of a missed opportunity that Warner Brothers has to own up to, because for some reason they seem to not like connecting their CW television people to their DCU movie people, except for, of course, that one episode of Flash. In all the character glory, the show did occasionally become a little soap opera-ish. And somewhere around season 6 and 8, they seemed to lose focus on where they should be going with the show. It did bring into play familiar faces during that time, such as Major Zod, and it brought into the loop the Fortress of Solitude and identifiable characters, DC characters, that gave hope that the finished version of Welling's Superman was nearby. Then there were times where the episodes got off track and they got a little wacky. There was the whole Lana being in a sorority of vampires, which I thought was kind of cool. The girls were really super duper hot. But the show did become a little soap opera-ish and a little wacky and a little drawn at times. Such is the case of how Zod was treated. He was more of a possession than a full-blown character. I would have liked to have seen Terrence Stamp kind of return to the role because he was so brilliant in it. But we got a possession of Lex instead. I'm sure there were some disagreements on how Zod should have been portrayed, or if Zod could be presented. Regardless, it was neat that it didn't work well. At least we got Terrence Stamp as Jor-El, right? He was the voiceover of Jor-El, and the positives certainly outweighed the negatives when it came to the characters and the story progression. And as the show became more popular, what Smallville could have used was a canon becoming more available. Right? Stick to the original story here. The show does a good job in progressing all the characters to a final familiar destination in Metropolis, and Welling in a Superman suit. The last episode does feel rushed, just like all last episodes are, because you have to tie everything up. And I'm sure that the creators knew the series was ending, and they wanted to give the fans what they wanted and what we waited for a decade. The show originally was at 9 o'clock Tuesday, then it was moved to Wednesday, then it was moved to Thursday, and then in the final 2 seasons, it was moved into, if you know anything about network TV, the funeral spot, which is Friday at 8 o'clock. That's where shows go to die usually. So they wrapped it up in season 10, and they delivered. They delivered, but it could have been better. There could have been more to it. And this is, of course, the business of television. Money always becomes an issue. Casting always becomes an issue. Who's available, who's not. Smallville, at the end of the day, still holds up better with a narrative and character progression than any other show that I've seen on WB or or CW or any Warner Brothers movie to date. I have not seen the new Superman film. Last, this is the world premiere weekend. It is the blueprint for good superhero storytelling, and it's always refreshing to go on Hulu if you have Hulu to check it out. I do from time to time, and it's just nostalgic for me. And to me, it was the savior of superhero films because yes, we're talking about a TV show and a serial, but superhero movies were not taken seriously anymore. And in that 2001, 2002 era, John Favreau is hired by Marvel Disney to make the Iron Man film, and he was a comic book fanatic. He wrote the film, he directed the film, and he casted a down and out Robert Downey Jr. And that, coupled with Smallville, coupled with a younger audience, a younger male audience, seeing Superman again, seeing Clark Kent again, in a very positive, well progressioned way, it opened the door for this explosion of superhero movies over the last 20 something years. Now, of course, everyone's saturated by these superhero movies because, as you know, the last 8 or 9 films that have come out by Marvel and by DC have been absolute horror bombs, except for, Joker and I forget which other one that was pretty good, but Joker was the Batman movie with the guy from Robert Pattinson. Those movies did very very well box office wise, and they were pretty good films. But other than that, and most of the stuff that's been out for the last 10 years have been bombs and have been shit. But Smallville did a very good job in reinventing, not reinventing, in reintroducing the Clark Kent Superman, Lex Luthor characters to the American audience, a younger American audience. I knew kids, I was 27 when the show first started, so I knew guys who were 15, 16 years old who thought Superman was corny and stupid. I told them, hey, give the show a shot. They were watching it every week. And they became superhero fans because that superhero wave started around that time, soon after. And kaboom, look where we are now. So, Smallville, of course, I watch it from time to time. I thought the first 5 seasons were excellent. 6, 7, and 8 were blah. And then once Rosenbaum left and they tried to find a every week villain for him, and they used Miss Tessmacher, who ended up, that's a play on Miss Tessmacher. It just didn't work. I mean, not that the actress wasn't good in the role, but her character was just not there. She wasn't Lex. It was a very hard thing to live up to, and no one has lived up to, not even Kevin Spacey has lived up to Rosenbaum's performance as Lex Luthor. And after season 10, a digital comic of season 11 came out, which was awesome. If you ever get a chance to see that, it was great. And it continued with the Superman adventures for another year in the comic book form. But that's my take on Superman. I was going to do a Batman versus Superman rewind, but I'm going to do a review tomorrow on the new Superman film. If you haven't seen it, don't pay attention to the critics. Everybody has their own opinion. I'm pretty much resigned to the fact that it's going to be woke as shit, probably. I just hope it's not Lois and Clark, because that was just, oh my god, how they cut that poor man on that TV show was absurd, insulting, insulting to every Superman fan. But anyway, that's the rewind of Smallville. How do we leave you? Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Be careful out there, my friends. Satan is always busy. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. We'll see you later.